Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean, and today we're going to talk about an absolutely insane story out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, where a girl who received taxpayer funds, a grant from the state of Minnesota, and money from the Minneapolis taxpayers, opened up a food pantry and decided that it was not only acceptable, but it's actually something noble, and you trying to stop her is an act of violence, to deny white people access to the food pantry because their starvation is just a symptom of their evil white racism. And no, I'm not kidding about this. This is not just her putting up a sign like you might have seen all over the internet.com. There are actual documented cases of her refusing service to white people based on the color of their skin. And again, it's a food pantry paid for by the taxpayers. Now, we're going to get into this, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
So the headline from this story comes from the Daily Mail, and it says, taxpayer-funded Minneapolis food pantry bans white people as boss's astonishing outburst at locals who complained is revealed. It says the boss of a Minneapolis food pantry funded by city taxpayers has banned white people from taking advantage of the resource. Michaela Kiko Jackson used a Minnesota state grant to launch the Food Trap Project Bodega, designed to help poor and hungry residents living close to the Sanctuary Covenant Church north of the city. The pantry opened on July 27th, but within months has been forced to close and relocate away from the church grounds because she attempted to block white people from accessing the service, and many people, including a local chaplain, complained. Now look, I'm going to show you a photo of this individual. You are going to see her, and I'm just going to highlight all the different indicators of an absolutely insane leftist, somebody who is so woke, somebody who's so interested in social injustice that she will deny starving people food based on the color of her skin and think herself virtuous for doing so. So let's put it up on screen so you could see this woman. So we have all the indicators of idiotic leftism on display right here on one individual person. First of all, you have the color hairs, we have the red, we have the blue, all these different various colors in this woman's hair at the end, but that is the least of our troubles. She's covered in tattoos, all the way from her chest to her face, covered in ridiculous and absurd tattoos. And of course, she has like a pound of piercings in her nostrils. So is it surprising when you look at this person that she adopts all these crazy radical leftist views? Is it surprising that when you give this person taxpayer funds, she denies white people the right to actually get the free services that the taxpayer funds are supposed to go to? On top of that, she has ridiculous and absurd indigenous symbols on her chest, which just go to show you that this woman not only identifies as a black victim of society, but she connects deeply with Mother Gaia, with Mother Earth, with the indigenous people, or at least what she imagines Native Americans to be in the United States of America.
Clear that you don't want to get it. Like, this is a completely unmonitored structure. Yes, we do have signage telling you who these resources are intended for.
Now, there's also this photo right here of the sign, which says, the resources found here are intended for black and indigenous folks. Folks is spelled wrong right there with an X. Please refrain from taking anything if you're not. And then you have this other sign outside that says liberate the people, and then it says black folks, free food and free herbs. And maybe, just maybe, this woman smoked too much of that special kind of herb, and that's why she's insane and thought she could get away with this. But the crazy thing is, after being caught, after being forced to relocate, she doubled down on this. She doubled down hard, and I actually have her TikTok video, and she actually opens it up with excusing her racism with the familiar thing that we've heard from many a leftist.
Dear non-melanated people, reverse racism is not real, and I wish you guys would stop weaponizing that term for your fragility.
Nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, uses the term reverse racism other than these woke idiots who have their own special academic definition of racism that somehow disproves any kind of notion that their behavior can be judged like any other normal person, while at the same time they're claiming not to be inferior to other races. Again, you can't hold them to the same standard, the same expectations, and all of that because, oh, look, we have this very special definition definition that makes it okay for us to not do so. But I will point out that these dopes talk about power plus privilege, and unlike the white people who are starving, who can't get food from this pantry because they don't have the power, they don't have the privilege to get this grant when they're wholly unqualified to run a food pantry, this girl ended up getting it post the Black Lives Matter riots, when we had to shift away from the evil white racists that actually just gave people food to all these people who mix their identity in it, again, based on that racial privilege structure that has been erected in this country.
So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Mikela Jackson, but I also go by Kiko. I'm an artist, a herbalist, an educator, and a chef specializing in Dr. Sebi's alkaline diet. But I also founded a nonprofit and a community activist and organizer surrounding food, environmental, and racial justice. So throughout my work of feeding my community and educating people on how to eat healthier, live healthier, and use plants to heal, I realized that the problem was deeper than people just not wanting to know about these topics. There was a system in place to strategically oppress people and deter them from having access to healthier foods, culturally appropriate medicine, and education on their body, nutrition, etc.
Now, I'll also point out that this woman fancies herself an activist, fancies herself a hero when she is nothing of the sort. But in addition to that, she's talking about alternative woo-woo medicine for people because you can't trust the medical system. And remember, this is brought to you by grants that are allocated to her by a Democratic administration, or actually multiple Democratic administrations at the statewide level with Tim Walz, who, by the way, is running for VP right now, and of course the local mayor, who's also a Democrat, and they're saying, oh yeah, trust the science, you can't have a job if you don't believe in our science, but at the same time, we're gonna funnel money to a racist, woo-woo, witch doctor-looking lady who's gonna sell you on some crazy cure based on the fact that you're a Black or Native American.
And everything I said can be put under an umbrella of food apartheid. Food apartheid is a term used to describe the systemic inequities in food access amongst specific communities, like typically low income or minority groups.
So first of all, this woman just said with a straight face the term food apartheid. Secondly, she has tattoos on her hands, making her even worse in my opinion, because I'm not a fan of tattoos, and especially bad, horrific tattoos that you get because you're a crazy leftist trying to be alternative, even though you end up looking like all these other different crazy leftists. But yeah, she's saying food apartheid is the issue in the United States of America. We just keep our food apart from the minorities because evil white racism. Gosh, aren't we concerned about the evil white racism?
This term is different from food deserts because it emphasizes the deliberate actions and policies that create and perpetuate these inequities, which are often rooted in historical injustices.
You're stupid. I just want you to know that. That's one of the reasons why you have to pause this after each and every sentence, and now you're talking about the systemic structural inequities for low income and specifically minority communities, and that's just something that she's very concerned about. Again, unless you're a white person, unless you actually have to have food from a pantry, unless you're trying to rely on the taxpayer and you end up showing up to her taxpayer funded thing and then you get denied services because you're an evil white racist and you deserve to starve due to your evil white racism. Again, just think about how cruel this woman actually is.
Like redlining, segregation, and discriminatory economic policies as well.
Shut up. Honestly, from me to you, from somebody who's competent, who knows how to do things, from somebody who knows the basic idea of America is that we shouldn't be discriminating against people. I know in the past we had discriminatory laws, but typically we try to move past those kind of things, especially again when it comes to taxpayer dollars. You need to shut your face. You need to stop talking, because the reason why there aren't grocery stores in poor neighborhoods, as we've discussed repeatedly, is because there's higher crime in those neighborhoods. In fact, Poor areas can support a grocery store if they're not having people steal from those grocery stores. But in Minneapolis, specifically where you lived, the Black Lives Matter riots destroyed different various businesses. So again, this is not due to redlining, this is not due to evil white racism, this is due to the actions of the people in the community. How about you take some damn accountability for your own actions? You're the one who's discriminating against people, instead of playing victim constantly and saying, oh, me, I couldn't possibly discriminate against people, as I'm outlining my case for discriminating against people.
In Minnesota, and I'm sure in many other states across the U.S., Black and Indigenous people are disproportionately affected by food apartheid than their counterparts.
Can we also point out that this woman is not saying the word white like it's a bad word, like it's something that just nobody dareth speak? She could say black, she says indigenous, she means Native American, which is the more common term. Indian if you live really close to a reservation, because that's what many of these people refer to themselves as. Usually it's a big indicator that you're dealing with a woke activist rather than somebody who actually knows any natives when they use the term indigenous, because that's the new trendy term. But the fact of the matter is, this woman is absurd in every possible way. She's ridiculous, and she's talking about food apartheid.
Some statistics within our own community shows that 1 in 6 adults and 1 in 3 Black children live in a food insecure household, meaning that they don't know when and where their next meal will come from, or they do not have enough food to go around.
Now look, I'm not going to go into the numbers and all that stuff for you guys out there in the audience. I actually did a whole entire video where I debunked all the stupid talking points of Jessica Burbank, and one of those dumb talking points was about food insecurity. And for those of you who are unaware, food insecurity is essentially a meaningless term, and according to the USDA, you are considered food insecure if you decide to change your eating habits due to the fact that prices go up or something like that due to costs, even if that results in you consuming more calories. So no, it's not actually people in the overwhelming majority of cases who don't know where their meal is coming from. It's people who see something, say, hey, you know what? Beef is really expensive today. I'm going to go with the chicken instead of that. And technically that makes you under the broad definition of food insecurity. What people are actually concerned about is the much narrower term, which is people who actually struggle to pay for their next meal or skip meals. And that is a much lower percentage of this country. And by the way, some of those people showed up to this woman's pantry, and based on the color of her skin, she denied them access to food because, oh my god, evil white racism.
You may have seen it already on a video on here, but essentially it's a 100% free resource hub for Black and Indigenous folks suffering from food apartheid within North Minneapolis. In there, we give out fresh produce, dry goods, herbs, and educational tools to help empower people to begin healing through natural practices.
So look, obviously this woman is absolutely horrible. Obviously this woman is a leftist propaganda-induced racist, and she justifies this by playing the victim. But make no mistake about it, the ultra wokes are those people who want to discriminate. They just want to be in that alpha position that they constantly view white people in, even though, again, that is just their own inferiority complex projected out onto the rest of the world. And this whole rant and part 2 are indicative of that.
We received a reimbursement grant from the Minnesota Department of Health. It was called the Paths to Black Health Request for Proposal, which allowed us to get funding to supply the resources that are distributed to the community through the FTP bodega.
Now, as horrible as this woman is, I do want to point out that she was essentially selected by the Minnesota government due to the fact that she has a bunch of these different racist, horrible beliefs. The grant that she specifically received was actually meant, according to the text of the grant, to give out resources to address the health disparities in the Black community. And to get the grant, you had to be an American-born African American. Again, let me read it for you. The grant's description states how the funds are specifically designed to support U.S. organizations that work with U.S.-born African Americans for whom studies indicate that health has been impacted as a result of historical trauma. This trauma includes post-traumatic slave syndrome and epigenetic inheritance. And by the way, this is not a joke. I actually clicked the link. It opened up onto a government page, and the term post-traumatic slave syndrome was on the government page. So as much as I want to throw shade at this individual for stealing American tax dollars and applying them in a racist way, the fact of the matter is she applied for a racist grant that was signed on by Tim Walz specifically for woke individuals like this for anti-white purposes.
This is an important part, and listen up. The grant specifically states that the funding and resources that come from the funding must go to the specific demographic of ADOS, which is African descendants of slaves, African Americans, Black people. And you can pause to read because this tells you why they want to do this type of grant. And then this one tells you how they want the funds to be used in the organizations that they want to support and the work that the organization does.
Now, after discovering this, Chaplain Howard Dotson, who went to take a look at the pantry from himself and was refused service for being a white man, actually filed a civil rights complaint with the Minneapolis Civil Rights Commission. He claims that Jackson told him in person how the food pantry was set up to serve Black and Indigenous people and was told how he could go across the road to the church's free pantry should he need it. Again, imagine that. You have somebody coming up with the term called food apartheid, and then she directs this guy to go over to the white side of the street in order to get his food. It's almost as if this idiot has no idea what apartheid actually means. It literally means apart, separate. This woman is advocating for a Jim Crow style separation between blacks and whites, or blacks and Indians and white people. Now, Jackson admitted to making the sign, but stands by her position, adding how she did not turn anybody away, which is probably a lie. Quote, "There was no one directly turning them away. They felt entitled to the resources that were not for their demographic. White privilege is real." Jackson then accused Dotson of political violence. "We hope these white patrons can go out about their day and not harass us anymore," she added. "The community needs it and wants it, and is willing to go to bat for the cause." Later in the Instagram post, she told how the pantry was moving because of a Karen. It has been recently brought to our attention that our partnership with the Sanctuary Church may not be fully aligned with our mission due to a recent incident with a Karen last week, Jackson wrote. "Although the church likes our concept, they feel our commitment towards directing these resources towards Black and Indigenous families only is discriminatory to other POC and white members of the community that use the establishment. It's an unfortunate situation, but we are deciding to stand our beliefs and relocate FTP Bodega to a space more aligned with the work we're trying to do," the post read. So yeah, while she's saying that she's not turning anybody away, not discriminating, her posts are also saying that it's for Black and Indigenous people only. Even other minorities, they need to go take a walk. They need to starve because your suffering isn't as good as the suffering that she wants to highlight. And again, this is all state funded from a grant that talks about post-traumatic slave syndrome. It is in the actual text. All of this will be linked in the description. This woman is disgusting in every possible way. This is horrible in every possible way, but this is what Tim Walz is doing as governor of Minnesota. This is what their woke, softer than Trudeau mayor is doing as mayor of Minneapolis, allowing this discrimination with your own tax dollars to happen against you. Again, Minneapolis, 58% white, only 18% black, and yet the minority is allowed to discriminate against the majority, which is very funny because, again, this woman represents herself as somebody who's talking about how apartheid is bad. Now look, obviously this is crazy in every possible way, but I want to know what you guys think about this down in the comments below. As usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the craziness in Minneapolis. Till next time.